In 2026, choosing a new smartphone can be quite complicated due to the huge number of options available on the market. That's why, after testing many different models, today I'm going to show you the ones that are truly worth it. And let's start right away with Motorola's X60 Fusion. The first thing I noticed when I held it in my hand for the first time was the display. We're talking about a panel that can easily be compared to much more expensive phones. To explain it in simple terms, while most smartphones barely reach 1080p, this one goes all the way up to 2712 by 1220 pixels. That means greater sharpness when viewing images on the device, reading text, or consuming any type of multimedia content such as videos, movies, or series. Some people say they can't notice the difference at first glance, but trust me, after using the device for hours without a break, this is something you really come to appreciate. On top of that, it has a 92% usable screen-to-body ratio, which means there are practically no bezels or borders, and almost the entire front is just screen. This is especially important considering its price, which sits at around $340. There are phones from other brands that cost even more and still don't offer displays like this. Of course, it's not just about the screen. Another area where the 60 Fusion surprised me, in a good way, is performance. As we explained here in a previous review months ago, its predecessor, the 50 Fusion, had a major issue. It used a processor that was completely outdated for today's market. Motorola clearly learned from that mistake and didn't repeat it this time. There's only one global version of the 60 Fusion, which comes with a MediaTek Dimensity processor paired with 8 GB of RAM, resulting in very smooth day-to-day performance. And it handles social media apps and even multitasking without any issues. In terms of battery life, it has lasted me up to 2 days, and the fast charging is quite good as well. Of course, it's not perfect. And in this video, I explain in detail what its problems are, the same issues that have led many people to instead choose devices like the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G, or even the 4G version. If we're being honest, the Redmi Note family has always been a benchmark when it comes to value for money, basically paying less and getting more. Here we get the same Dimensity processor as in the previous device, but paired with up to 12 GB of RAM and 512 GB of internal storage, which does make a real difference even when the processor is exactly the same as in the previously mentioned X60 Fusion, making this Redmi noticeably more powerful. It easily surpasses 728,000 points on EE.UU, getting dangerously close to what many people already consider flagship-level performance. And that's precisely one of the most interesting things about these Redmi Note devices. For example, the audio quality is very good, the build quality and materials are excellent, arguably even better than those of Poco X7 Pro, and the software, to be fair, has improved massively compared to what Xiaomi used to offer years ago with MIUI. Overall, these are devices capable of delivering a semi-premium experience, something that usually costs a lot more money, often well over $400, yet here it typically sits between $250 and $290. Of course, depending on where you buy it, the price may vary, and this is exactly where you need to be careful because once it goes beyond an exaggerated price range, let's say over $350, it might be better to look at other options, even though HyperOS has been performing incredibly well and continues to improve with each new system update. Years ago, Xiaomi's software was known for being a mess and holding devices back. You could have the best processor, tons of RAM, fast internal storage, cutting-edge chips with no latency, and it would all be ruined by the software layer. While that has changed significantly for the better, especially in the newer generations, there are still people who remain skeptical, and for them, I usually recommend more traditional devices, such as the Samsung Galaxy A56. This is a reliable, well-balanced phone made for people who prioritize peace of mind over raw power, and also for those coming from an older or lower-end Samsung like an A33, an A21, or something similar. Its price is usually around $250, which is roughly 6,200 Mexican pesos or 1,300,000 Colombian pesos. Of course, that's the current price, since when it first launched, it was more expensive and arguably not as worth it. But right now it stands out as one of the smartest choices for anyone who wants a Samsung Galaxy with everything that implies, without having to jump to the most expensive models. From the moment I took it out of the box, I noticed how well built it is. Honestly, it's one of the most premium feeling models in its category, not just physically but also, and even more so in terms of software. One UI combined with Samsung's ecosystem is an excellent pairing. A minimalist, lightweight, and well-optimized interface that still offers useful customization and optimization features. It sits at that perfect balance point where it's not loaded with useless apps you'll never use, but at the same time doesn't feel empty or overly simplistic like some other interfaces. We get up to 12 gigabytes of RAM and the Exynos 1580 processor, which delivers more than 840,000 points on AnTuTu, ensuring that everyday apps run smoothly and that there are no major lags in daily use. One thing that may seem a bit strange is the wide price range at which this phone can be found. For example, in Mexico, it can cost anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 pesos, which globally translates to roughly $350 to $450, with the sweet spot clearly being below 6,000 Mexican pesos or around $380. In short, if you can find it at a good price, it's definitely worth recommending. If it's too expensive, then it may make more sense to look at another device, such as Xiaomi's 15T Pro, or even the regular 15T. Both phones designed to offer a lot for relatively little money. At this point, though, we're already stepping into premium territory. The K7 Pro scores over 2,700,000 points on AnTuTu, which is absolutely insane, as it means ultra, high-end flagship-level performance without costing an absurd amount of money. On top of that, both the battery life and charging are outstanding, with fast charging reaching up to 90W. There are phones that cost more than $1,000 and don't even offer half of that. When it comes to pricing, it starts at around $550 and goes up from there, with the Pro model even exceeding $700. And that's where you really start to question whether it's worth spending that much money purely for power, especially when options like the Poco X7 Pro exist, which for under $300 can handle virtually anything you throw at it. This one is already an old favorite on the channel. In fact, it's the phone I made the most videos about last year, and I'm sure that hundreds, if not thousands, of people ended up buying it based on our recommendation. Its Dimensity 8400 chip delivers over 1,600,000 points on AnTuTu, which puts it very close to phones that cost more than $500. Yet this one doesn't even reach $300, and in some specific cases can be found for under $270. In other words, for less than what an average person earns in a month, you could get a phone that directly competes, in terms of performance, with some of the most expensive models on the market. Put simply in everyday language, it's absurdly cheap and insanely powerful. At this point, it's no longer just about whether daily performance is good or if common apps like social media run smoothly. That's a given. It does that effortlessly. We're talking about the big leagues here, running demanding games and even emulators at high, stable frame rates, pushing graphics to the maximum without worrying about whether they'll run or not. Most importantly, it's about ensuring that the phone will remain good over time, because having power to spare is, above all else, future-proofing. Software keeps getting more demanding, and the power that today may seem excessive will be necessary tomorrow. So having it now is a huge advantage. In plain terms, it doesn't just have a good price-to-performance ratio. It has the best one. And it's not only about the processor. This is also a phone that was ahead of its time in other areas, like its massive 6,000 milliamp hours battery, in a world where many manufacturers are only now starting to adopt 5,000 milliamp hour cells. For all these reasons, the X7 Pro will continue to be one of the most recommendable phones out there, at least until the X8 Pro is released. That said, it has become so extremely popular that some people now dislike it simply because of that, which is why many are starting to look at alternatives like the Infinix GT30 Pro, a phone I also bought, tested, and analyzed extensively here on the channel. It's highly comparable to devices like the Poco X7 Pro, Poco F7, Poco F6, or Poco X6 Pro, and it completely changed expectations around the Infinix brand. In the past, buying one of these phones felt like a risky bet, since few people really knew who the brand was, where it came from, or where it was headed, and most of its devices stood out mainly for design and little else. That's no longer the case. As I showed in my gaming tests, this beast easily pushes past the 60 FPS mark in a large number of modern titles, including those considered high-end, even outperforming phones that are more popular and more expensive. And just because it has massive performance doesn't mean design was neglected. Quite the opposite. It actually looks like an ultra value for money red magic, especially when you look at the back or the customizable side buttons designed specifically for gaming. Even it's possible to buy it, just like we did, bundled with a gaming kit that includes an external cooling fan designed to improve thermal performance during long gaming sessions. As for pricing, it can usually be found starting at around $240, although in some markets, it can climb up to $400, and that is perhaps one of its weakest points, something that also affects many other models from this brand. On a global level, their distribution logistics are not very advanced, which means that in many countries the phone is either hard to find or simply too expensive. This can lead to situations where it's no longer worth buying, since at that inflated price it might make more sense to save a bit more and go for a true high-end device, such as the Poco F8 Ultra. And at this point, we're not just moving up a level, we're leaving the planet, maybe even the galaxy. To begin with, this absolute beast, which can come with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite G5, capable of reaching an insane 3,797,000 points on AnTuTu. Yes, you heard that right. This is one of the most powerful smartphones currently available, even though its price is high compared to what we historically expect from the brand, especially for this type of model. The reality is that its audio quality is phenomenal, its performance is on a completely different level, and overall, the experience it delivers has nothing to do with other Xiaomi or Poco devices. This is top of the top, a phone that directly competes with devices most people consider the very best on the market, and which are usually also the most popular and expensive. Of course, when someone spends this much money, they usually don't go for a Xiaomi, and even less for a Poco. That can work against it, and that's exactly where well-established legends like the Samsung S25 Ultra come into play. Samsung has known how to build premium devices for many years, and this one is no exception. While it's still expensive, its price has dropped significantly in recent months due to the arrival of the new S26. And what can I say? The best display in the world, the best camera, incredible durability, a stunning design, and build materials meant to last for decades. Overall, I'd say it's the best phone I've ever tested, although I still have an internal debate with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, a device that's just as expensive and controversial as it is complete and functional. But wait, I know you probably don't want to spend that much money. That's why I'm leaving you with a video featuring 7 mid-range smartphones that I highly recommend buying right now. Just tap the box appearing in the center of your screen to go watch it.